Well, thanks very much, Bill. My goodness. And good evening. My name is Mike Graybill, and I'm one of the members of the League of Women Voters Port Study Team that's hosting this evening's event. Now it's time for the audience participation part of this forum. I'd like to invite Alice back up to the stage. Alice will be moderating the question and answer sessions. So I'd also like to invite three people to the stage who've graciously agreed to help answer questions this audience might have about the global supply chain. Steve Hughes and Bill Burgel have already been introduced, but now it's my privilege to introduce you to Bob Morrow, who's joining Steve and Bill on the stage for the question and answer session. Bob Morrow's distinguished career has centered on stevedore operations, marine terminal technology, and operations at international ports in Asia and North America. Here on the west coast of the US, he's managed projects to improve container throughput at marine terminals in Long Beach, Oakland, Tacoma, and Seattle. In short, Bob knows his way around the waterfront. Bob has an MBA and is a seasoned project management professional with focused experience in marine terminal operations. Thank you for joining us this evening, Bob. Now please help me welcome our question and answer panelists, Steve Hughes, Bill Burgel, and Bob Morrow. Yeah, I think so. I think we can move the table out a little bit. And we'll turn it over to you, Alice. I'll let you get around the corner here. I don't know if you want this right here. Is that where you want it? Or you can...
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, here comes our first tranche of questions. Excuse me. Once again, if you have questions, if you need a paper, raise your hand and we'll bring you papers. If you have questions, raise your hand and they'll come collect them. The first question, how do containers get from the crane to the rail car, electric or diesel? How much more to upgrade rails for passengers?
That's yours. If I understand the question, at the ship at the port, they would offload them. They do occasionally do a direct hit where they'll go right from the ship to the train. More often than not, they'll put them in certain positions on the dock, and then they'll readjust it based on where that goes in the train and all sorts of things. Most of these trains are usually built where they'll go. They won't have like Denver's or Salt Lake's containers. They'll be Far East. They'll all be basically trains that go from here all the way to Chicago, and then they'll disperse them there's just south of O'Hare Airport is one of the largest rail yards in the world. Global too, and that's where they disperse them. A lot of them, the cuts of those cars or those containers will go on to different trains. A lot of it will get drayed or trucked from Chicago back to Des Moines or forwarded to Detroit, that sort of thing. Most of those gantry cranes are electric. There are some basically diesel operated gantry cranes, but most of them are electric these days. Steve?
Yeah, it really depends upon the terminal, of course. You do have some diesel, but they are going more and more electric. But as I've seen at the ports of LA and Long Beach, you have a very big concern when you electrify a port as to the draw on the grid. We do have brownouts and other electrical issues at both ports in LA and Long Beach. You don't hear about them because they don't like to advertise them, but it's been known since the inception of the Clean Air Action Plan 2 that there wouldn't be enough electricity to supply those two ports. So that's one of the key concerns you should have here. is whether your grid can support the amount of electricity that would be required to run an electrified port.
Did we answer the question?
The second part of that question was regarded upgrading the rails for passengers.
Yeah. Currently, Union Pacific runs passengers between Portland and Eugene, and that they basically they maintain the track to FRA class number 4, and then that's good for 80 miles an hour. And the requirements are such that you have to have so many good ties in a row, and the surface and the alignment has to be just right to handle that, and those are all in compliance. I can't imagine a scenario where, forgive me for saying this, but I don't see passenger trains coming to Coos Bay. I used to work for the DOT as a consultant, and they were very keen on running passenger trains down towards Roseburg and that sort of thing, but the curves and such don't really allow speeds much faster than 30 miles an hour. And with the interstate right by, with everybody going by 70, it'd be really hard, given the curvature. The curvature really limits the speed that you can do. That's one of the issues with high-speed rail. High-speed rail only works because the tracks are straight, and there you can get up to, as you know, 200 miles an hour in countries that support high-speed rail. If you put just a half a degree curve, that drops it down to about 190 miles an hour. And if you go to a 1 degree curve, it drops it down to 100 miles an hour. So high-speed rail really has to be in its own dedicated alignment, and it has to be tangent or straight track to achieve those kind of speeds.
Yeah. The other component to consider is how many passengers will there be? Do we have enough of a population base here in the Coos Bay metropolitan area to justify a rail and all the expense that it would take to build it?
I'm going to read this next question and then I'll deliver it to you because it's kind of long. This is for Bill. How many minutes, hours in total will it take 12 trains, each 1.5 miles long, to pass the intersection of the train tracks on the causeway that accesses the north spit of Coos Bay on a daily basis? And I'm going to say this sounds like an Algebra 1 question.
Yeah, again, you have to figure, at 25 miles an hour, you're doing, like 30 about, 40 feet per second. It's not going to take that long. We're talking about each train is at 25 miles an hour. You're talking about 10 minutes per train. That's just a guess. I'm not doing the math here. But the trains that are really impact are the 15,000-foot trains at 10 miles an hour, and I have done the math on that, and that takes 35 minutes to pass an intersection. And we have that situation in Portland. If you ever get down towards OMSI, that area, those trains go that speed, and they are that long, and it takes 30 to 35 minutes for them to pass. A 1.5 mile train at 25 miles an hour is going to be, roughly 7 to 10 minutes is the maximum. Again, I haven't done the math, but I'll do that math while we have other questions here.
Thank you. The next question is for Bob Morrow. How is being near a container rail terminal likely to influence a residential property values?
Well, there's noise, there's light, and there's potential for pollution. And these are definitely places that folks don't want to be living. One component of the rail is that property values along that rail line will probably diminish within a half mile to a mile on either side of that. And then when you add in the number of crossings that will not be signaled in any way, it would definitely be an impact, not only along the rail line, but also in Empire, for example, directly across from the terminal.
I don't know if you can answer the next question, but we will be forwarding it on to the port. This question is for anyone. It is the developer who is ultimately responsible, not the port. When will we hear from the developer or meet them?
That's a very good question. I think a lot of people would like to learn a lot more from the developer.
Yeah, how long is a piece of string?
Yeah.
Who knows?
I'd like
I
to
don't
just here. One of the things I forgot to mention was because we have not heard very much about the terminal, the League actually invited the CEO of North Point Development to attend this meeting and come as a presenter. He was not available during the time that we had proposed for this meeting. But we'd like to think that we will have an opportunity to ask the same kind of questions that we're asking to this, or at least ask that question to him at some other time. And so we will continue to try and encourage him to come to this community to talk about the plans for the container terminal.
Oh, more questions. The next question. I thought our port would be in competition with Portland, not containers going up and down the West Coast. Please clarify.
Could you repeat the question?
Yes. I thought our port would be in competition with Portland, not containers going up and down the West Coast. Please clarify.
Well, first of all, I think it's important to understand that Portland's not a high demand port at all. And the competition between Coos Bay and Portland, if it was strictly for container shipping, Portland would win out. It's what I alluded to during my presentation. For Coos Bay, you're going to end up approximately, let's say, $200, just as a reference number. You're going to add 3 days of transit. Why would you come down to Coos Bay if you can go to Portland and eliminate the 3-day dray from here to Portland and eliminate that cost of bringing it up there? If you bring it straight into Portland, which is an underutilized port to begin with, you've got more advantages. You don't have a space issue. So that's my thoughts on it.
Yeah, and right now Portland is certainly both railroads call on Portland, but they get very little business out of Portland.
Yeah.
Most of what happens, most of those containers that you saw there in my slides at Brooklyn Yard, those are trains that Union Pacific brings down from Seattle to Tacoma.
Yeah.
They'll bring them into Brooklyn, and that train crew will go away. The locomotives will go to the shop, and they'll replace the locomotives with that. And then they'll basically reassemble 2 or 3 of these trains that come from Tacoma into one train that runs from Brooklyn Yard all the way to Chicago. It's 10 crew stops, and basically that's 15,000 feet, and they'll put 2 locomotives on the head end, 2 locomotives about 2/3 of the way through, and 1 locomotive at the rear end, and that train will run. And they do this very safely. This kind of operation has proven itself not only on this corridor, but it's incredibly safe, especially since they put in positive train control, which was mandated by Congress back in 2008 and was finally installed nationwide by 2021. And this is kind of unbelievable, but Union Pacific has not had a mainline derailment since that happened. So 4.5 years of no mainline accidents with not only the train crew that's on there, as well as having the additional guidance of this positive train control, which is really an uplink to a satellite that helps control the train movements. So,
but going back to the question is why you thought you're asking if Coos Bay would be in competition with Portland? No, there is no competition. Unfortunately, it's a common sense business decision, which makes the most sense, to go straight to a port that has a direct line to start heading east, or to drop down, add more money and more time to transit. I hate to say it, but it's a common sense decision now.
And besides the time and the money, there's also the risk factor involved.
Oh, yeah.
Next question. If the Port of Coos Bay proposal is 2 million TEUs, then what percentage of West Coast capacity is that going to be?
What percentage of the capacity? Well, we've got 20 million down in LA Long Beach, 2 million in Oakland, so you got 22 million. It's going to be about 9%. It's not going to happen. 2 million Ts coming in through here. Again, you have to convince the supply chain executive to make this decision to move from, let's say, Oakland, which has multiple directions that the trains can leave from or head to different locations, or to come up here to Coos Bay and be forced to go to Eugene and then up to Portland before it starts heading east, and plus those added costs. Again, you have to make a business case for a decision like this, and the business case isn't there to draw business away from Oakland. It's not going to happen. Both Oakland, LA, and Long Beach are all expanding their capabilities, expanding and improving their rail facilities. So, as a supply chain executive at this point, I wouldn't consider Coos Bay, and I'm sorry to say that because I know that you're thinking that this can bring a lot of revenue and business to the community, and I applaud you for that hope. But unfortunately, from a business standpoint, looking at this, it doesn't make a lot of sense to divert to Coos Bay, and I can't see.
So that was the next question. What's the bottom line?
What's the bottom line?
Sure seems like the PCIP would not be attractive to supply chain execs. I think the answer is right.
I could not, in all good faith, if I had IPI's inland port locations that I had to deliver to, let's say I'm an AutoZone or an O'Reilly, and my main distribution center is in Chicago, I would not be considering Coos Bay. I couldn't. It would put my company at risk. It would add extra cost, extra inventory to the shelf. I'm going to be taking the straight routes, the ones where there's hopefully direct calls, where I know my material is not going to get stopped as a risk of, let's say, a tree falling across the tracks between here and Eugene, or a landslide. We're going to be taking a look at all of that, but as I showed in my decision tree, cost, transit time, and environmental impact, especially with these big guys now, they're really focusing on the environmental impact. When you take even one of those three and say, well, it's going to increase, right away the choice of that port, that carrier, whatever your choice is on that decision tree is going to be eliminated. So when you say, well, it's going to increase the cost, it's going to increase the transit time, and it's going to add to my carbon footprint, no, it's not going to happen.
Have environmental impacts been researched and have permits been granted?
No. I don't know the answer to that.
Terminal operations, Bob Morrow. If a ship arrives at a port and unloads, say, 2,000 containers, must it pick up the same number of containers before they leave the terminal?
Absolutely not.
No.
And that's another component of this terminal that comes to question is we have a great number of imports coming from Asia potentially, but what are the exports? How is this port going to be used? And most exports now are basically agriculture in nature. And we are not in a position here in Coos Bay to receive agricultural products that might be exported. The second component would be empty containers. And again, the cost that we've already discussed about getting a container out of Coos Bay and into the main rail system are exactly the same in reverse to get an empty container back to Coos Bay to load up and then move further on. And it may not make sense as the container ship moves up or down the coast.
Here's another container question. When a ship arrives at a port, do all the containers get taken off?
No, absolutely not. You could have, if this is a transit stop, so if it starts at SeaTech and then stops at Coos Bay and then goes down to Oakland, it could have as few as a couple of hundred containers offloaded. So there's no limit that I'm aware of, but there may be a commercial limit. Let's say the carrier may say, well, we've only got 200 containers. It doesn't make sense to stop at Coos Bay. Let's drop them at Oakland. And believe me, I would not put it past the carriers to do that. I've seen it done before. So no, there is no, you must do this as on the volumes.
This is for you, Steve. How do ports recruit ocean carriers?
They have to make a business case for it. The carriers, they have to see that there would be a revenue stream from this decision to service this port. They're going to be looking at it like I do, and they'll probably poll a few of their bigger BCOs. BCO is a beneficial cargo owner. That's an importer or an exporter. They're going to poll their various BCOs and say, do you have any interest in importing into Coos Bay? Now, again, the 2 million TEU number that somebody's pulled up, if you had 2 million TEU going into Eugene, I'd say, yeah, you've got a possibility of a good business model here. But you don't. There's no major distribution centers that I'm aware of in Eugene, and there certainly isn't enough, if there are. There's certainly not enough to support 2 million Ts or even 1 million Ts, in my view. So, yeah.
There's a lot of container questions here, so we're just going to keep feeding them to you. How are empty containers managed? How do empty containers get back to Asia? Who pays?
Who pays? The carrier pays.
Okay.
They're managed. You would have a stowage area in the port for the empties. So those are segregated from the fulls or the in-transits or the containers that are being held. But yeah, it's a matter of logistics. Again, it's just saying, okay, this portion A of the yard is dedicated solely to empties. And they're swept up when a ship comes in for a call to drop off containers. They will sweep off X number of empties, however many they feel that they can manage going back.
Okay, this is a question for all of you. Can you comment on the trajectory of automation vis-a-vis job numbers? PCIP is touting 3,000 to 4,000 jobs. Research locally shows that might be closer to 400 or so.
I'm sure there's some union members in the audience, from your break bulk report, but I'm sorry, the union's not very keen on automation. In California, you can't have anything fully automated. The government actually came in and said anything that's automated has to have a human operator, which is a little bit counterproductive in my mind. But look, I'm all about maintaining jobs. If you're talking about port automation, it will be a struggle to get significant automation. And again, automation is going to drag on your grid. So that takes a lot of electricity to run. But it's hard for me to go on much more than that. That really is terminal operations, and it's not my specialty. So,
well, I want to say there is a lot of technology out there.
Yeah.
I mean, if you take a cab ride in San Francisco without a driver, it'll give you an indication of what vehicles are capable of. And those vehicles in some terminals are actually moving containers without operators. The camera systems now will actually record into a terminal operating system all of the information on the chassis, on the container, if it's on a truck, the truck registration going out, who the driver is. If a container is moved, twist locks on and off will create an event that'll populate the database. There's a significant amount of AI coming into play now. Again, they're modeling the terminal to help minimize pollution and minimize motion as they pre-stage trains. So the technology is there. It does improve the flow of traffic through the terminal, and improved flow means there's more materials being moved. That means more income. So it is a double-edged sword, however, with labor.
Yeah, so the perfect example of, in the Western Hemisphere, of automation is actually in Long Beach. It's the Long Beach Container Terminal. If you want to Google that and go to their website, you might get somewhat of a vision of the automation. It's really a remarkable terminal. The number of moves or containers that they do per hour is very, very good. Compared to manual use where you've got an operator there doing it. Even though there's an operator still involved in it, the movements are much more efficient. It's a wonderful terminal, but the ILWU does not like it. And they have been against automation as a rule. For some time, even though it's in the contract that they can allow a certain amount.
Bill, did you want to weigh in on this one?
Typically on Union Pacific right now, you're running an engineer and conductor only on the main line trains, but on branch lines, Portland Western is often runs just a one-person crew on their trains that don't do any work, for instance. And these trains that ran from Coos Bay to Eugene, they would, if I were the general manager, they would probably just run with one engineer only.
Thank you. This is the last question. You guys have been great. All presenters, what would you advise is the most important due diligence issue that the PCIP proponents should undertake?
Prove a business case. To me, that's number one. If there's no business case to where they can prove that this is going to be a fully supportable, plenty of business running through this port, if they can't prove that, then they're in trouble.
Yeah, we as a state need to talk to the people that are actually going to operate these things. Basically, it's based on what Steve said. It's the ship owners that decide where these things come and go to. Did I say that right?
No, it's the supply chain executives that actually make the decision.
Yeah, my mistake. Thank you, Steve. But in the case of Millersburg, nobody really talked to Union Pacific about how that would work, and consequently, we have basically a white elephant on our hands at $70 million that was spent, taxpayer money. You guys helped pay for that. It has never been used, and that's my fear here. Is you're not talking to the right people, and Steve just pointed you the way to the right people. The railroad in this thing is just a conveyor belt. They're not the key decision makers here, but it is the ports. And you saw the competition that Coos Bay is bucking up against. We're talking about 9, soon to be 10 down there by Ensenada, ports that are on the West Coast. And what these ports do is they pick and choose, and they work one port against the other port in order to get the better rates. And you guys, that's how the Port of Portland. That's why it doesn't have any business. It's just used as a foil against other the shipping companies.
And let me explain one other point. So When it comes to pricing on ocean freight, we have something called base ports. The base ports are the main ports, let's say in China. We'll just use that as an example. So Qingdao, Shanghai, Ningbo, Xiamen, Yantian, and Hong Kong. From those base ports to the West Coast, pretty much all the major LA, Long Beach, Oakland, SeaTac, Vancouver probably have the same exact freight rate. So if SeaTac has 1560 and Oakland and LA all have 1560 and Coos Bay has 1560, but I have to pay another $200 to get it up to the rail line to head east, what are we talking about? Where's the business case? Did I leave you speechless?
Back in 2002, BST Associates did a project for the port, and they evaluated 6 different versions of what a port might look like. And long story short, they decided that it really did not make sense. In 2003, Parsons Brinckerhoff did the same thing and came to the same basic conclusion. In the pursuit of a new business model that we see in the shipping industry, Maersk Lines actually wanted to get involved and become a participant in some capacity. And that was in 2006, they decided, no, it doesn't make sense to come into Coos Bay. In 2017, Stantec Consulting Services was hired, and we have not actually seen the result of that. My suspicion is that it's not great news because they haven't published what the news is. So again, to the business model, truly that's at the core. Is the company that is putting this forward with North Point, they are basically a development company. They don't have any experience building terminals. You know, what is their exit strategy if that's not their core business model? And again, you're looking at competition with terminals up and down the West Coast. Vancouver is actually going to be getting Point Roberts, which is another terminal that may be coming online. Mm-hmm. And if we're really looking at 2 million units coming into Coos Bay, they're going to have to come out of one of these other ports. Yep. And who is going to give up that business? And what would Coos Bay have to give up in order to actually obtain that business? Would it completely eliminate the profitability of a terminal?
And there's going to be more competition for, besides the ports that I mentioned, either expanding or improving. We have a challenge now with tariffs, and we see some onshoring going on, or some nearshoring being Mexico and Canada. So we're seeing a drop in imports. So with a smaller number of imports out there, at least for the time being, there's going to be more competition by the ports to grab that. And I know this project's a number of years down the road, but I still think the same challenges and business model questions remain.
Thank you so much. 2 housekeeping details. One is I want to remind you that this is being recorded, and you can go to the League of Women Voters website, and it'll direct you to where this can be viewed. The second thing is that events like this are not without cost, and while the League is happy to rent the Egyptian, it didn't come free, and so if you would like to contribute, there is a donation jar outside. Finally, I want you to all join with me in thanking our 3 presenters who have just been outstanding.
So whoever wrote the question about the 12 trains, and I have the answer if you want to come about.